Good morning. Today I want to deal with an event which is not recorded in Luke's Gospel. It is in fact recorded for us in the Gospel of John. But I think unless we understand this, we will fail to understand a lot of what is going on around Jesus at this time. Jesus had three friends living near Jerusalem, a very wealthy family. The man's name was Lazarus. He had two sisters, Mary and Martha. And when Jesus visited Jerusalem, he would visit with them and associate with them. We don't know how the friendship had been established, and we have no details about how it had been set up. But Jesus had these three friends. One day he gets a message to say that Lazarus is ill. He does nothing about it. And then he goes to his disciples and says, "We are heading for Jerusalem because Lazarus is ill." And they say to him, "Well, try and stay away from there because, the Jews are after you. They're going to try and catch you." And he says to them quite simply, "Lazarus has died." So they decide, well, in that case, they have to go with him. And they travel down to Jerusalem. And they met there in Bethany, just outside of Jerusalem, by Mary and by Martha. Martha first and then Mary. And the two sisters come to him and they say, "If only you'd come earlier. If only you'd come earlier. But our brother's now dead and has been dead for 4 days." You see, there is a tradition that when a person dies, the soul stays near the body for a couple of days. This was part of a Jewish myth. But after 4 days, it was recognized that the soul had gone. All that was left was a dead body. The body would be buried, but people would still keep praying and just asking God to bless the person who died until the spirit departed. But now this man had been dead for 4 days. We all know the story. Jesus goes to the grave weeping. Mary and Martha go with him and they say, "Roll the stone away." They say, "Well, by this time, 4 days is going to be a smell, it's going to be unpleasant." He said, "Roll the stone away, just trust me." And they roll the stone away, and he cries out, "Lazarus, come out." It's a good job he mentioned the name Lazarus, because Jesus, being God incarnate, if he just said, "Come out," for all I know, graves around the place would start opening. But he calls directly, "Lazarus," he says, "come out." And out comes Lazarus, still bound up with the grave clothes. They untie him and set him free. People were absolutely amazed by this. They were coming to Bethany just to see Lazarus, to find out who he was and what he'd experienced. They wanted to meet him and Mary and Martha, and the authorities in Jerusalem now realized a crisis point has come. They've got to do something, and they've got to do it quickly. Sometime after this, we don't know exactly when, but Mary, the sister of Lazarus, when Jesus is present in their house, brings a jar of ointment, breaks it open, and pours it over his feet, almost like a thanksgiving for what has happened. And Judas, seeing this happening, declares this should not have been done. This ointment could have been sold. You see, this great perfume was set aside and then sealed in clay jars. Once the jar was broken, then it had to be used. You couldn't reseal it. It had to be used immediately. It would have been sold in the jar for an immense amount of money. And the money, he said, could have been given to the poor. But he's angry now at what is happening as he sees Jesus anointed in this way. And it is for this reason, we are told, that Judas approaches the Roman authorities and says to them, "I am going to hand him over to you. I disagree with what is happening. I disagree with what is happening in this place." And they, knowing about the resurrection of Lazarus, are only too happy to employ him in this way and promise to give him 30 pieces of silver, which is the price of a slave. 30 pieces of silver, if only you will hand him over and show us how to arrest him. I say this simply because after the resurrection of Jesus, Sometime later, Stephen is arrested and killed. And at that time, we're told the apostles actually scatter. Why? Because the authorities were still trying to wipe out this early church. And a lot of the apostles go off to different cities. And Lazarus, who is still alive, and probably his sisters as well, decide to leave Jerusalem because of the danger, and they move down into Cyprus. They live in a place we now know as Larnaca, in Cyprus. And later on, Paul and Barnabas, visiting that place, come across this infant church that Lazarus has established there. And they actually consecrate him as the elder or bishop of that place. And if you go to Cyprus even today, you'll find that church there. Or if you want to look it up on the internet, you'll see that church there in Larnaca. Why? Because the authorities wanted to wipe out all mention of the Christian church. They wanted to stop it. See, being Christians means you will always come under persecution. Amen.